Welcome back to another episode of Bloodstained Backstories. I'm your host, Jace. In a world of academia, brilliance often shines brightly, but sometimes it casts a shadow. Amy Bishop was a Harvard-educated biology professor with a promising career. But behind the accolades and achievements lay a dark and chilling story. Join us as we unravel the twisted tale of Amy Bishop, which is a story of ambition, tragedy, and the haunting question, what drives someone to cross the line from genius to killer? Our story begins on December 9th, 1986, where Amy was involved in a mysterious shooting death of her brother in Braintree, Massachusetts. She shot her brother with a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, and both Amy and her mother claimed it was an accident, and the Braintree police did rule it as such. Now, at this time, Amy's mother was a political supporter of the police chief. Go figure. If you know people in high places like this, you can get away with murder. And the files relating to the shooting disappeared by 1988, mysteriously. Kind of suspicious, but also at this time know that computer systems and databases were not as sophisticated as they are today. A lot of records were kept in file cabinets or boxes in warehouses or in basements and things like that. And so sometimes, unfortunately, records at this time period did go missing more frequently than people would like to admit. In 1993, Amy and her husband were suspected of sending 2 letter bombs which failed to explode to Paul Rosen, a Harvard Medical School professor. Paul was Amy's supervisor at the Children's Hospital Neurobiology Lab and had given Amy a negative evaluation. Amy was said to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and her husband reportedly said that she wanted to shoot and strangle Paul. An investigation into the bomb was eventually closed with no charges being filed. Thankfully, the bombs did not explode and nobody was injured. On March 16, 2002, Amy was involved in a fight with a customer at an IHOP restaurant in Peabody, Massachusetts. The customer had taken the last booster seat, and Amy confronted her. When the woman refused to give up the booster seat, Amy punched her in the head and yelled, "I am Dr. Amy Bishop." Amy did plead guilty to assault and receive probation, and anger management classes were recommended, but she never went. Unfortunately, that is the downside to our justice system when things like this are recommended and are not required as part of the terms, is people can just not do them and then nothing actually comes from it. People don't grow from it. People don't learn and change. And so Amy gets away with essentially nothing, just probation. Now, Amy then moves on to University of Alabama as a professor, and in 2009, several of her students complained to administrators about her on at least 3 separate occasions, saying she was ineffective in the classroom and had an odd, unsettling ways. There was even a petition that was signed by dozens of students and sent to the department head, but no changes became of this. In March of 2009, Amy was denied tenure at the University of Alabama. She filed for an appeal with the university's administration, and they determined the process was carried out according to university policy, and her appeal was denied. Then we begin to go into Amy's last semester of teaching at the university. And February 12, 2010 was a day like no other at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. During a biology department meeting in room 369 on the 3rd floor of the Shelby Science Center for Technology, Amy stood up during the meeting and began to shoot people close to her. 3 people were killed and 3 people were wounded during the shooting. After the shooting at members in the room, in a deliberate way, she turned the gun towards herself, and the gun either jammed or was out of bullets. According to witnesses, there were 12 to 13 people at the meeting, and her behavior was described as normal prior to this shooting. The shooting started about 30 to 40 minutes into the meeting, and she got up and started shooting across the room at people who she knew. Deborah Minority, The dean of the university's graduate program and a professor of biochemistry said this wasn't random. She was shooting as an execution style. After the gun had jammed, Deborah and several other faculty tried to stop Amy by pushing her out of the room and blocking the door. Amy then went downstairs to rinse off the gun in her hands. She put the gun and her bloodstained clothes in the trash. Next, she went to one of the labs and asked a student to borrow their cell phone. Using that student's cell phone, Amy called her husband Jim and said, "I'm done." Amy was then arrested outside the building at the loading dock and was saying things like, "It didn't happen and there's no way." When she was questioned about the death, she continued to state things like, "There's no way, they're still alive." So Amy continued to be very delusional at this point. The victims of the shooting were Gapi Padilla, the chairman of the biology department, Maria Davis, a biology professor, Adriel Johnson, senior biology professor. The other people who were injured were Luis Rogelio Cruz Vera, a biology professor, Joseph Leahy, a biology professor, and Stephanie Montecallo, who was a staff assistant. After Amy was arrested, several in the biology department expressed concerns to police that she had booby-trapped the science building with a herpes bomb intended to spread the virus. While she was completing her postdoctoral studies, Amy had worked with the herpes virus and wrote in her novel that the spread of a virus similar to herpes throughout the world was valuing pregnant women to miscarry. Police did search the building thoroughly to see if there was such a booby trap or bomb, and nothing was found in the building. Amy was charged with 1 count of capital murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. On February 16, 2010, the files that were missing from her brother's shooting were located by then Norfolk County District Attorney Bill Keating, and he was later elected to the House of Representatives. And he stated that there would have been enough to charge Amy with assault with a dangerous weapon, carrying a dangerous weapon, and unlawful possession of ammunition, but the statute of limitations on those charges had expired. Wonder where those files mysteriously were and turned back up to. It's kind of interesting how when someone's getting ready to be elected, those things might turn back up after the statute of limitations had passed, conveniently. On September 11, 2012, Amy pleaded guilty to the charges and waived her right to an appeal so that way she would avoid the death penalty. On September 24th, a jury heard a condensed version of all of the evidence, which is required by Alabama state law, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on September 24th, 2012. On February 11, 2013, Amy filed an appeal. The appeal stated she was not informed of her rights by waiving and pleading guilty, and she was not correctly informed of the minimum range of punishment, and the circuit court failed to explain that she could withdraw her plea. Now, I find that hard to believe that someone with such intelligence such as Amy didn't know these things and wasn't actually explained them at all. And on April 26, 2013, the Court of Criminal Appeals of Alabama rejected the appeal, stating that Amy failed to challenge the validity of her guilty pleas in a circuit court and did not file a motion to withdraw her pleas or a motion for a new trial. After the tragic events of the shooting, there were many changes and improvements to the university. The university now offers an employee assistance program for their employees to use. They complete background checks on faculty, which they did not do at the time that Amy was hired, although completing a background check wouldn't have actually revealed anything, since the only thing that happened was Amy had probation for the IHOP incident. The incident with her brother would not have even shown up at all, nor would have anything related to the letter bombs, because she wasn't actually found guilty of anything and no charges were ever filed. So I don't know that a background check would have really changed anything here, but it's good to know that moving forward, the university did do those things. The university also formed a behavior evaluation and threat assessment, or beta team, to help respond to faculty, staff, and students who are having difficulties or and or are demonstrating concerning behaviors. So another good piece of information to have. But I, again, don't know that had that actually been in place, anything would have happened either, as Amy, who was known to act this way, wouldn't have really been reported probably for having concerning behaviors if this is the way she behaved. So again, had something like this been in place, it likely wouldn't have mattered or changed anything here or even prevented this tragic event from happening. But it is good that they have this in place now and are able to utilize it. The conference room where the meeting took place has now been converted to offices, and a new conference room has been built, which is now all glass so that people are able to see in and out of the room. Again, a nice feature that probably wouldn't have changed anything anyways. It's nice that you're able to see in and out and you can see what's going on in the meetings, but that wouldn't have prevented anything from happening here. Let us know what you think about this case of Amy Bishop and the events that transpired where she was able to get away on several different charges through her years, and only until the fatal one that ended up where someone actually was murdered, she was then convicted. We would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Bloodstained Backstories. Be sure to check us out on all the different social media platforms. You can find the links to them in our description below.